get us into, I mean, let's talk about Another in the Fire and how, like, what was the scenario or what was God doing in your life and in your world when that idea started to kind of come to the surface?
Yeah, I mean, we had been in New York, my wife and I. We were the creative pastors at our church in New York, and we had multiple campuses and just hundreds and hundreds of volunteers that we were kind of overseeing to run creative at our church, which for us, creative was like an umbrella term of worship and production, but also communications and social media, like film and TV, like all of that stuff sat under creative. And
Right.
so it was definitely like a big role, but we had like such an amazing team. And I remember sitting in a service. It was like it was at one of the points when we had so many services, like 5 or 6 on a Sunday. And I don't know what it's like for you, but by the third one, giving the message your full attention is a labor of love. And so we had
No, I mean, come on now, come on. No, it is. It's part of the lean in. Yeah, right.
And so we had a guest speaker in one weekend, and I was sitting in the service, and he was preaching about the kind of that classic Sunday school, like kids Sunday school story about Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And so, like, I think even from the beginning, from the first service.
Did he use a felt board?
No, there were no felt boards involved. There were no visual aids.
Man, swing and a miss.
Yeah, I offered that feedback.
Here I am asking about skits and felt boards. You can tell where I came from. So, yeah.
Great. Yeah. Your parents volunteered at Vacation Bible School, for sure.
For sure.
But yeah, it's so funny because it's like you have these Bible stories that you become familiar with because you've heard them 1,000 times and you've heard them since you were a kid, and you can almost get jaded to these incredible stories. And so I, embarrassingly enough, have a very, vivid memory of him being like, open your Bibles, we're going to learn about Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And me being like, been there, done that, heard it, and and this guy, like he absolutely, he preached an unbelievable message. He had a really fresh, incredible perspective on the scripture verses, and he preached with conviction, and it was really, really powerful. And even still, like I said before, like by the time you've heard that message 3 times, 4 times, you're kind of like really struggling to stay focused. And I just remember sitting at church and listening to this message, and I felt like the Holy Spirit was just like, you're going to write a song with Joel, who referring to Joel Houston, who's a really good friend of mine, big brother, Leeds United, and I really just felt like the Holy Spirit was like, you're going to write a song with Joel called Another in the Fire. And that's never happened. That's never happened to me. Like I've never,
oh my gosh,
I've never had, that's only ever happened to me once since then. And but I don't have people always
What's
talk about
the other title that he gave you? Has it come out? Maybe you don't say it if you don't need to. Keep it.
We'll talk about it. Hopefully we'll talk about it on another episode.
I like that. Keep people leaning in.
Yeah,
okay.
So like people always talk about having, like God drops. Like I don't, it's just not something that I'm familiar with. Like I don't really have that. And so I just was like, okay. So I just wrote it down in my phone and
good job.
Was like, okay, I guess I'll just keep an ear out.
We'll do that,
and figure it out. and I messaged a mutual friend of Joel and I's, and I said, hey, like I think Joel and I were supposed to write a song called Another in the Fire. And um I kind of got like the little text bubbles back, and then they disappeared. And
Yeah.
I was like,
Oh
man, this
gosh.
is the worst, because I've definitely put myself out here.
Yeah, here I am, pretty vulnerable.
And
Yeah.
and then then the bubbles came back, and then he just wrote back. I'm in. And I was just like, okay, cool. Like this is cool. And so that was kind of it. Like I didn't even say anything to Joel. I didn't know when I was gonna. I think maybe he was traveling at the time, so I didn't know when I was gonna see him next.
Yeah.
But I just was kind of like, all right, well, I'll keep this. I'll just kind of keep this on the back burner and see what I can figure out. And then eventually, kind of felt like I had like a kind of like lyric and chorus melody sort of coming together. And Joel and I were hanging out. We were hanging out at the same house, I think, for like a Labor Day party or something like that. It was not like the type of environment where one shares a song. But it's
just like hang, like our kids running around, like
it's like a barbecue, like
okay.
And but I was
it's real peaceful, serene,
totally. But I was just like, I don't know when I'm gonna see him again, so I kind of had to like put my shoulders back a little bit and be like, all right, like this is because Joel and I have written before, but it like I said, like I'd also never had a drop before where I felt like God was like, hey, like you're gonna write this song.
Okay.
And so I was kind of like, well, I gotta own this, I guess. And so I just went to Joel and I was like, hey, like I think we're gonna write this song together called Another in the Fire. And he goes, okay. And I was like,
I love how available everybody is. They're just like, all right, let's do that.
And he goes, do you have anything? And I was like, well, not really. Just sort of kind of the title and maybe a chorus. And he goes,
that's what I have.
Yeah. And he goes, all right, well, show it to me. And so we, kind of snuck away to this like side room at this house. It was both of our friends' house. Like we weren't even, so we like, we went into this room with a piano in it. Didn't ask permission, just kind of sat down and I was like, and I just kind of played him the chords, and all I sang was, there is another in the fire. And then but then he looks at me and he just goes, yeah, I'm in. And I was like, okay. And so we just kind of started chipping away at it. And I think at the time, like, Joel was, I think they were probably off the back of the Wonder tour. And I think probably just trying to figure out what was next. And I was kind of juggling everything with our church kind of exploding and trying to figure out how to manage all of that. And we also had my wife and I had a young child, at the time, and just kind of like trying to figure out all that balance. And so, like writing for Joel and I wasn't like sitting down in these big marathon sessions. It was just like catching up every couple weeks, if and when we can, about whatever. But mostly I think we, it kind of came at a time where we personally, like in Leonie and I's life, we kind of started working through a lot of stuff with some doctors for our son, who kind of started noticing some like developmental milestones that he had been missing. And kind of when you're a parent, but especially as a first-time parent, there's kind of things that like you don't notice, but just because you don't know that you're supposed to.
You don't know.
Them.
You haven't been in this space either.
Yeah, and so that was that was a bit like shocking. And so we kind of started working through all of that, and then as that kind of went on and on, we started having conversations about developmental disabilities, and what kind of some of those things might be, what some of those things might look like. And so I think that was like a really um, hard season for us, because
Yeah.
because I think, and I know that this is not how God works, but my brain was going, I can't give anything else. Like, I'm doing everything that I know how to do. I'm wall to wall working 60 hours a week, trying to help build this church. Like, I'm doing my best. I'm giving everything that I possibly can. I'm sacrificing
Right.
everything I possibly can. Like, what else could God possibly want from me?
Wow.
Like, I don't, this just isn't fair. This doesn't make any sense, because that my understanding is that, like, if I give my life to build God's church, he's going to protect me and he's going to protect my family. So
Yeah.
this doesn't make any sense, because this is the opposite of that. And so I think I started working through that. And then at the same time, I remember Joel being in a place, like, I would want to respect his privacy, but, like, I know he was in a place with his mental health at the time where he just was really, really, really lost,
Mm-hmm.
and kind of trying to figure out up from down. And so what ended up happening was, on my family and I, we, like, lived quite a ways outside of the city at the time.
Okay.
And so on Sunday nights after church, I would go up to Joel's house and I would stay the night at Joel's house. And, like, I would go to work on Monday and then go home after work on Monday. And so, but those Sunday nights, I would say, or that's where Another in the Fire got written, not through sitting down at a piano, but just through having conversations.
Processing all these things that are going on in life. Yeah.
Totally. And so it was like working out everyone's always kind of like, well, what is writing for you? And I'm like, writing for me is me working out my faith in real time.
That's amazing. Yeah.
And so I think Joel and I, we're both just kind of in this place where we were maxed out in every by every measurable, and obviously in completely different circumstances, but feeling the exact same way.
Right.
And kind of wondering, what have we given so much for? Like, what have we sacrificed so much for, if this is what we get, like,
right.
and I think that is a big, that's a big kind of challenge to stare down and go, like, all right, like, I'm gonna work this out. And I just kind of remember having a resolve, but of quite an angry one, like like having a resolve where I'm like, I'm not walking away, like, I'm not giving up on this. That being said, I'm not stoked about where I'm at right now, and I'm pretty upset with
super valid
with God, because I don't think this is fair. But I just remember having so many conversations with Joel, and we would go round and round and round and round and round for hours and hours and hours. And then at the end of the day, like, every single one of those conversations without fail would end with, like, but God's good somehow, like, he's good, like, somehow.
Right.
And so,
and he will come through on it. Well, it's interesting, just even as I'm hearing you share this story. Thank you so much for just kind of opening up and letting us in, because I think hearing that and understanding just the personal space that both of you guys were in the environment in which God was working. Because as I'm hearing you talk, and then I even just think back to this this Bible story, right, that we all know.
Right.
Like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, here they are. They're in Babylon. They're in exile. They've worked their way up, and like, you know, the people who were gathered that day were kind of the heads of all the departments in the kingdom, you know.
Right.
And here they are supposed to bow down to this statue of King Nebuchadnezzar, and they don't do it, and they do what God asked them to do. They
Right.
only worship God. They don't worship something else. And because they did what God asked them to do, they find themselves in a fiery furnace,
Yeah.
you know? And it's this thing of, I mean, it's exactly what you're talking about. Here I am, God. I'm following you. I'm doing what you've asked me to do. I'm pouring my life out. I'm serving my family. I'm trying to live and love my family and live and love for your church and to build into the things that you've called me to build into.
Yeah.
But yet here I am still experiencing hardship, you know? And so, because what I think is amazing, and I don't mean to jump ahead, you can kind of get back into wherever, but how did y'all find you didn't just write a song about a Bible story,
Right.
you know, but you've somehow found, do you know what I mean when I say you found the song in it? Like you found the thing that we need to like sing. Like how did y'all, like, I guess in some of those discussions and in that working out and in that, like, how did y'all find, like, what would you say is like, what's the thing in the song that is that thread for us that kind of connects us to the truth that's being communicated in that story, and how that was like touching where you guys were at?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we kind of both got this, and I use this word, you know, with trepidation, you know, like I feel like we kind of got this revelation that, you know, your voice doesn't need a song. Your song needs a voice, and so that's what writing is going, I have a song and I'm going to give it a voice. And so I think we kind of just started going like, there's a way to unpack everything that we're feeling that is true biblically, but it's real, like it's human.
Yes.
And so I think for me, that was like a huge kind of measure for the song, was being able to measure it against that, going like, I don't want this to be a song where we just complain about everything, all about how horrible things are, and then pivot and be like, but God's pretty cool, right? You know, like
right.
I was like, it's really important to me that we acknowledge the circumstances that we're going through, but that we acknowledge the goodness of God and his faithfulness, and we acknowledge that paradox, and through acknowledging that paradox, we actually go, wow, doesn't that actually make God even bigger, even more good, even and so I think we just kind of started. We were at a staff retreat, and we had pages and pages and pages of lyrics, and at a certain point,
I love that. All of you guys, your whole crew that you've written with, like y'all just, it's like lyrics, like it's incredible.
But I think like Joel has this theory that he goes, every song is 5 minutes away from being done. It's just a question of when those 5 minutes are going to happen, you know, like, and so, and so we, at a certain point, we were just kind of like, you know what, like we're going to write the song or we're not, like, so we're just going to have to,
by the way, the Holy Spirit already told you that you're writing it.
Right.
So.
Yeah. So we were like, we've got the melodies that some melodies that we like, you know, like we've got like good, like little phrasings, everything like that. And let's just, let's do it, you know? And so, we you know, stayed up and wrote till, you know, 4 a.m, you know, 5 a.m, or something like that. But we were
Y'all are
just like,
crazy.
we're not leaving this room until we finish the song, because it's kind of now or never, because that we had taken the song out to pasture so many times that we were like, this song's stupid, like this doesn't even make
Oh
sense.
my gosh.
And
Yeah.
and then eventually we were just like, all right, like it's now or never, we got to do it. And so
Yeah.
I messaged Leone and I was like, hey, I'm not like in a ditch somewhere. I'm with Joel writing a song. And so we did everything that we could to get it across the line. And then I was leading worship at staff retreat that following night.
Okay.
And it was just kind of like, hey, like let's do the song, like let's see what happens. And
How many people would be there?
maybe like 30 or 40. It was just kind of
Okay.
acoustic worship,
Yeah. Yep.
and and so we ran the song in rehearsal. And this is like, actually, this is one of my favorite things. This is a little unknown, is that we ran the song in rehearsal and it was like, okay, like that was like, everything felt good. And then while we're up doing the service, we're going to do the song like third in our set list or something. And while we're in like our second song, I see Joel at the back with the pro presenter guy. And I'm just kind of like, oh, that's bizarre. I wonder why he's standing back there.
Yeah.
And my thinking is that he's back there gonna like kind of coach him through the changes and all that. And I was like, wow, what a good friend,
Yeah.
But as it turns out, what he's actually
No.
doing is he's changing lyrics
No way.
like in real time with the pro presenter guy. So as lyrics are coming up on screen, I'm singing them for the first time.
Oh my gosh.
Like, and I'm
No
just
way.
kind of like, I'm dying for the next slide, because I'm like, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so, but also
That is wild.
it's like these lyrics that are filled with like Joelisms. So it's like, I'm singing that lyric and I'm like, that's rad, that's so cool. And
So now we're in the 5 minutes.
Yeah,
We're in the 5 minutes. Yeah.
like it's actually happening. And so, we,
Oh my gosh.
so we do this song, and it just erupted, like even in that kind of environment with
Yep. Yep.
just some acoustic guitars and I think like a violin, like it just
Yep.
absolutely opened up something. And
Wow.
I think from there we brought it into church life. But even just in church life, we were like still workshopping some of the arrangements and lyrics and stuff. So we just brought the chorus on like a Sunday night at church, like just the chorus.
Which one?
It was like an amalgamation of it was like the second and third chorus
Okay.
were, because we weren't sure about like the journey of the
You're
song
not sure.
yet,
Let's just do both. Let's do
like,
both.
and it was like one of those things where we did, we sang that for 20 minutes, like, and it
That's
just
incredible.
And I just think that it, I think it's hard because you have a feeling sometimes, like you have a feeling that there's something special on a song.
Yeah.
And sometimes you're right, and sometimes sometimes you're not, like, and
Right.
But then
right.
like what's really funny is that then there's other times where a song just comes out of nowhere and you're like, wow,
Right.
how this is insane that people just connect with this in such a powerful way. But
Yes.
I think that we had a sense that like there was something special with that song, and so I think getting to see it kind of come to life in church, and just seeing, still having memories of like people in our congregation, watching them sing it, knowing what they're going through in their life,
Mm-hmm.
but still, like, I think the thing for me, like any songwriters who are listening, like you've got to have some skin in the game, like when you're doing this, like you've got to know who's in your congregation, and you've got to know what they're going through, like otherwise you just write these ethereal concepts that like you hope connect with people. But if you've got some skin in the game, you can think about the single dad who like is just trying to keep the lights on and
Yeah.
raise his kids in church. Like you
Yeah.
know about the guy who sits in the fourth row on the left side,
Mm.
who's a recovering alcoholic. You know about the family that's sitting over here who's been coming to church faithfully for years and years and years, but beneath the surface, they're on the brink of a divorce. Like, and it's like you have to know these things about your congregation, because that you have to be
Yep.
able to go, like, what do the people in my church, like, what do they need to sing right now? And so I
Right.
think for me to have all these people who I know their stories, um, come up and be like, man, that song, like the wildest one for me is, it's like there was a family whose home literally burnt to the ground.
Wow.
Like they all came, they managed to get out of their house in the middle of the night, and everything that they owned,
Mhm.
their entire home, just burnt to the ground. And we're singing, I don't know this, but we're singing There Is Another in the Fire on a Sunday morning.
Right.
And
Oh, wow.
they're going like, God's in this. He's in this
Yeah.
with us. And I'm just going like, oh my gosh, like, but I just think
Man.
that when songs like don't stay grounded
Right.
in not only in the word, but when they don't stay grounded in just humanity,
Life. Yeah.
like
Right.
it's like, then what's the point? And so I think,
Right.
sorry, that was a
No,
diatribe rabbit trail,
man, I was on the edge of my seat. I'm listening to every bit of it because I just to encourage you. I mean, in this song and in a lot of these songs that you and a lot again, just a lot of your crew just had been a part. Like it holds the tension of the brokenness of the world that we live in and the hope that we have in Jesus. And
yeah,
obviously that's communicated so powerfully through this incredible story in Daniel 3, right? Where, I mean, even, as people are looking in at these guys in a furnace and they see one who looks like the Son of God,
totally.
like, and when they come out, this is so powerful, right? Is like that they don't even have the smell of smoke on them.
Oh, I know.
Like they are untouched by this fire. And what this song, what you guys have done in somehow helping us wrestle with the tension of it all,
Yeah.
and yet still find hope and still find the goodness and experience the goodness. We're able to, and this is the power of the gospel, I think, we're able to transcend the hardship. We're able
Yeah.
to move through. But you're right, you can't just gloss over it. You've got to go into the front. You got to go through it, but you have God. You have God going with you, and you're not walking through that alone. And so even just, I mean, I feel that sense as we're talking about that, of like God walking with us through
Yeah.
every hard season. I just wonder, would you, even just as whoever's listening to this, wherever they are, whenever they are, like, would you just speak to that? Like, how, like, would you just encourage somebody even today as they're walking through the fire, like walking through the hard season right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the most audacious like part of the whole Bible story in Daniel is, and even if he doesn't, like
Mhm.
we still won't bow. And
Yeah.
that's preposterous. Like,
Wow.
because that it takes what our expectations are, what we think the arrival should look like, what we think the other side should look like, what we think the breakthrough, or all whatever kind of Christianese term you want to throw in there. Like,
Sure.
it's like it takes that off the table, because it goes, even if this doesn't happen, um,
Right.
I've pre-decided
Yeah.
what I'm gonna do. And
Yes.
so I think those are kind of like fighting words, like,
Mhm.
and they're dangerous. And it's like, it's, we always joke about like, it's like people are always like, Spirit lead me where my trust is without borders. And then God leads them somewhere insane and they're like, where am I? And God's like, what did you
There
think
are
was
no borders.
like,
Yeah.
what did you think was going to happen? And so I, I have this,
Yeah.
I remember going to Australia for the People recording, and we had just gotten an official diagnosis that our son Rhodes was autistic. And
Mm.
we, had been praying for so long and kind of journeying through that. And that just kind of felt like just a kick in the gut, like it there was kind of like, it felt so final,
Wow.
and
Yeah.
and and I just remember going like, we had this trip booked. I knew we were going to be recording the United album in Australia, but I didn't want to go. I didn't want to be in church. I didn't want to be around anyone. Because I just was like, I just don't know if I don't know if I believe any of this. I don't know if I can reconcile any of this. And
Mm.
I remember seeing Joel, and I don't even think we said anything to each other. We just kind of stood there, like, and,
Yeah.
and I think we kind of he said, I might have you jump up for the recording. I might not. I'm not really sure what the plan is. And so we were kind of going through we were at the recording for the night. And God bless my wife who forced me to attend, because
Was she there too?
she was, and I
Yeah.
was
Okay.
trying to not go. And and I ended up getting kind of called up on the stage to sing the song. We sang the song, and it was it was just really powerful. And
Yeah.
we kind of got into this moment at the end, where I think we ended up keeping like an extended version of the song somewhere. I don't know where it lives now.
I think I've seen it on. I think it's on YouTube
Right.
for those of you who want to check it out.
But like, it essentially ends up in Joel and I end up in like a just like a throwdown, rap battle of like an even if he doesn't, kind
Like,
of.
yeah.
And
He's like, "Where's the pro presenter, people? I've got some more words."
Right. And I think that for me was like the stake in the ground kind of moment, like,
Yeah.
and I think,
Wow. Did you feel like a sense of completeness from from that moment in church where you heard the Lord say, "You're going to write this song"? Like, did you feel like, "Hey,
yeah,
you did"?
I think I did, because like, God is so aware, so acutely aware of exactly what we need to hear, and how we need to hear it, and when we need to hear it, and where we need to hear it, and the people who need to be around when we hear it. Like, he's so sovereign. It's just it's so stunning
Yeah.
how sovereign
Yeah.
he is.
Yeah.
And when you really accept the reality that God knows you better than you know you,
Yeah.
like, that's a humbling thing to kind of accept. And then
Yeah.
you go, wow, I thought that I wanted these answers this way. I thought that this was going to work out like this. I thought that, this is where I was going to end up. And, you know, I- but I think that so often God has this way of, he does, he, the way that God does things is he'll speak something to you that's going to last, not something that's
Yeah.
just going to satisfy you for a moment. Like, and I
Yeah.
think at any given moment throughout that whole process of writing the song, God could have just been like, here's the song, it's beautiful, like people are gonna love it and sing it.
Yeah.
But it's like, rather than it becoming a song that that people have responded to and who have sung, you know, it's like, I tell people it's like if you took a PA and plugged it into Chris Davenport's soul, that's the song that would come out.
That's the song. Yeah.
Like,
I mean, no doubt.
and I think that's what, but I think that's what God was like, I'm going to use this process
Right.
to teach you that.
Yes.
And I think that, when you have a revelation of God's goodness,
Yeah.
that doesn't seem, if you don't have a revelation of God's goodness, you hear a story like that and you go like, wow, that seems like really like diabolical, like,
Yeah. Yeah.
but it's like when
Yeah.
you have a revelation of God's goodness, you're like, it's, you're just like so in awe of how in control God is,
Right.
how sovereign he is, how good he is, how
Yep.
faithful he is, and how he uses all of these things, that they don't make sense right now, but they make
Right.
sense. They make sense in the view of eternity, and
Yes.
in the view of seeing things the way that God sees them, and like we always think about, um, you know, uh, Peter walking on water, like, and we're all like, man, like that's what faith is. It's like, yeah, there's an element of faith to that story, but that story to me has actually always been more about obedience, because it's always
Uh-huh.
been like, God, tell me to do this and I'll do this. And then he did it. But there's 11 other disciples who were just as obedient by staying in the boat,
Mm-hmm.
like, and they all got to where they were going, not because that they all did something spectacular, but because they just were all obedient to what God told them to do. And so I think
Yeah.
for me, just being obedient to feeling like there's this song that I think we're supposed to write, and we're just going to chase it until we feel like
Yep.
it's right. And then getting to see it kind of come to fruition in a way that, hopefully encourages people. But more than that, primarily, I hope that it communicates to them a picture of
Mm.
who God is and how good he is.
Yep.
And 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 by doing that, being able to make sense of life a little bit, a little bit more.
Yes.